2 years ago, I tried an experiment where I wanted to see if I could push my body past what I thought I was capable of. I wanted to take the idea of mind over matter and see if I could manifest it in my own life. So it was about a 3-day period where I decided that I was going to run off of 4 hours of sleep. I was going to get up at 12:30 a.m. Go to sleep at 12:30 a.m., get up at 4:30 a.m., take a cold shower, and get a workout in, and then start work around 5:45, 6 o'clock. Work until 5 p.m., spend some time with my family, and then get back to working on projects around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock p.m., up until the 12:30 a.m. bedtime. And the first 3 days of this routine, it was like a honeymoon phase. It was, I felt so, I felt like I was able to push past my excuses of wanting to sleep in and not wanting to work out, and pushing myself and forcing myself to grow. And it was about on the third or fourth day where I woke up and I had this tingling sensation in the back of my throat, that that feeling that you get, that you think you're on the verge of getting a cold. And this was the only time in my life that I was excited to have that feeling, because to me, that was going to be the moment of truth of, could I get my mind to correct itself, to convince myself that I wasn't sick, and actually continue the routine. So I went through the routine that day. The next morning when I woke up, not only did I not want to get out of bed, I couldn't get out of bed. My body was completely wrecked. Physically, I felt like I was ran over by a truck. It was just difficult for my mind to take in any light at all, just opening my eyes. So for the next 3 to 4 days after that, I was laid out in my bed, not able to get out of bed and not able to be productive at all. And it was just incredible to see how the type of productivity that I felt that I had making before I got sick, how it was just all swept away in one fell swoop because of my physical health deteriorating. So what this taught me was that I think looking back at that experience of 2 years ago, was that I was able to push through certain challenges when it came to my fear of taking cold showers, or pushing through being uncomfortable physically to get a hard workout in the morning. And then also on the mental side of things, it was great to kind of push myself during the late evenings to get more productivity out of me. But this ultimately comes down to sustainability. And to me, what I've learned is that there's a time to push and there's a time to pull. There's a situation where you could be pushing yourself, which is absolutely something that I encourage and I practice, and that's something that all the guests that I've talked to on this podcast talk about, is about pushing yourself into an uncomfortable situation, whether it's physically or psychologically. That's the only way that you can grow. You only grow when you're uncomfortable. But there is a point of diminishing returns where you break yourself down so far that you get the more that you put in, the less that you're actually getting out. And in my scenario, in this experiment that I ran 2 years ago, I literally pushed myself and my immune system way too far. And being that my immune system was compromised, I didn't have the ability to properly repair myself and and have the proper defense mechanisms in my body to combat illness. It makes me think of a psychologist and Buddhist meditation teacher, Tara Brach, who once said that when we get sick, it's our body telling us that we need to rest. And it's a sign, and to me, it's this idea of your body saying, if you're not going to rest, we're going to put you in a state where you have to rest, and you have to be patient, and you have to think. And that's certainly what happened to me in this experiment. To me, coming out of it, sustainability, it's about being able to push yourself for the longest time possible. And I'm not talking about days, I'm not talking about weeks, I'm not talking about months, I'm talking about years and decades, being able to run this marathon of getting the most out of yourself and transforming yourself and realizing potential. And the only way that you can do that is if you're approaching your growth in a fluid manner. As biological creatures, we're not static objects. We're not just here's how we are and this is how we stay. We're constantly in flux with our environment, both internally and externally. And having that fluidity in your training, whether it's your mental training or your physical training, is absolutely essential, because it all comes down to context. Yes, there is a context in which you can, and sometimes, unfortunately, you have to be in this mindset where you're saying mind over matter, and you push yourself well beyond what you believe that you're capable of doing now. But each exertion of energy has its tolls and has its costs. So to me, instead of draining the tank and pushing it on E down the street, you have to look at it as an investment of, okay, how much am I putting in to receive? How much am I getting in return over the long term? And this makes me think of having mind over matter in a specific context. It makes me think of stand-up comedy. The biggest lesson that I've learned in stand-up comedy is context is everything. It makes me think of Gary Vaynerchuk once said, when it comes to marketing, that content is king, but context is God, right? So in a stand-up comedy situation, what I've learned is I could take my funniest bit, and if I place it before or after a certain bit, during a certain time of the year, in a certain location, in front of a certain crowd, that changes everything about it. Something that works in Cleveland doesn't necessarily translate to Akron, even though we're one region and we're part of, the same area of the country. There's different microcultures nested inside of those audience that show up to listen to comedy. And not each bit is the same during each given situation. And I feel like the same thing applies to how we manage stress and how we push ourselves or implement patience with ourselves when it comes to our training and it comes to managing stress. So that balance is so difficult to make sure that how am I not making excuses, but how am I also executing and pushing myself and striving to achieve my goals? And the biggest thing that has helped me in this area is a biometric called heart rate variability. Now, going back decades ago, boxers made it popular to track your heartbeat in the morning to see how well your body's recovering. So beats per minute is a very great indicator of health, but the heart rate variability takes it to another level in which it monitors the variation between each heartbeat. And contrary to logic, when your heart rate variability is consistent, that means your heart is doing more work to recover from the previous day's activity. When the variations between each beat is more sporadic, that means the system has managed stress well and is not under psychological or physiological stress. And that's something that's important too about HRV, is that not only is it your training, whether if you're a runner or if you're a weightlifter or if you're doing yoga, obviously all of those things are going to impact your training. But on top of it, your heart rate variability is a great indicator of how well you're managing psychological and internal stress as well. So heart rate variability and heartbeats per minute. What's nice about heart rate variability is that it gets more specific on what activity your heart is making. So your heart, when it beats, it's not like a metronome. It's not like a every half second's going to beat. It's actually there's different variations between the two. So you might have 2 beats and then 3 beats and then 4 beats and then 1 beat and then 1 beat and then 3 beats or whatever. So it's all over the place. That's how the heart works. And when there's variation between those two, that means the body is not under a lot of physiological or psychological stress. And HRV, certain apps that you can use, gives you a way to visualize the variations between your heartbeat. So when I first heard about heart rate variability, I used an app for about 18 months called HRV for Training. So they have this app available for iPhone and Android. And if you go to their website, they have a plethora of data and research articles on not only heart rate variability, but using your smartphone as the tool that monitors your HRV. I used that for about 1.5 years, and what that is if you have a smartphone in the morning, what you do is you turn on the app. It uses your phone camera light, and you place your finger on top of that and on top of the camera lens, and it takes your pulse. And what happens is it monitors that pulse through, I think it's like 5 to 7 days, and it takes the variations between your heartbeats, and it makes a benchmark of where you are when you wake up. And it's very important to do it when you wake up, because that's when your body is, you can get the most consistent reading after the day's impact. The day before that leads up to when you're waking up. You can get a clearer reading when using it first thing when you wake up. And it gives you a benchmark, and then after you have that benchmark, it takes your heart rate variability on a daily basis and it compares that to the benchmark, and it will show you if you're in a low recovery state, medium recover state, or a optimal zone recovered state. And all of those, the visualizations will give you the ability to determine, should I go hard today? Should it be business as usual? Or should I just hang out, go walk, take a walk in the sun, and maybe meditate a little bit extra? I have since moved to the Heart Watch app. I use the Apple Watch now that is integrated with my phone. And what I like about the Heart Watch app as opposed to the HRV training is that the HRV training app only takes my HRV in the morning, whereas the Heart Watch app is tracking my HRV throughout the day and also tracking my not only my beats per minute throughout the day, but my waking beats per minute. So when I wake up, I do check my HRV with my Apple Watch, but it's also recording my beats per minute when I wake up. So those two metrics over a 7-day period, it builds a benchmark. And wherever I come in at, what we're looking for is a higher HRV score. So what they call a MS score. Want that to be higher. We want more variation in the heart. And then we want a lower beats per minute. Because if you have lower beats per minute, that means the heart is working less to pump more blood throughout your system. So the Heart Watch app combines both of those. And not only does it combine both of those, but I wear my Apple Watch throughout the day. So it's tracking not only how my heart is behaving throughout the day, but also when I sleep. And as I mentioned, this is important for both psychological and physiological readings. So and I've tested this out before. I've been in a low recovered state, and I pushed myself to see, if HRV, if the tools aren't as accurate as they are. And I can attest that every time I have pushed myself, I felt it the next day. And there's been situations where I've been in the red, if you will, when it comes to my HRV score, and I've pushed myself and I've gotten sick before. So that is something to keep an eye on. But then also the psychological effects also play a role. There's been times where I was able to monitor my HRV and then monitor my the time that I spent meditating, and you could see a clear relationship between a drop in HRV and drop in recovery score when I do less time meditating. So for me, I have an idea of how much meditation or just being able to relax or having some time to myself and not working too much or working out too much. I have that idea based off of my data, but like I said, context is everything, right? So context is God. So for you, getting the data, tracking your HRV every morning and building up this data and these benchmarks will help you determine how far you could push yourself and when to pull back and be patient. So with that, thank you so much for listening. I hope you're well. I hope you're happy. And I hope you're healthy. Thanks and take care.